Friends of Formula One, let me reveal the most jaw-dropping trick of the entire 2026 season. The move that handed Kimi Antonelli his pole position and is sending shockwaves straight through the paddock. During qualifying at Silverstone, the two Mercedes drivers did something that looked completely insane. Something that goes against every racing instinct you can imagine. They lifted completely off the throttle just meters before the finish line, in the middle of a flying lap. No driver in the world would ever do that voluntarily. And here's what makes it so extraordinary. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a mechanical issue. It was a precise instruction coming directly from the Brackley pit wall. Behind that seemingly senseless gesture hides a brilliant regulatory loophole, one that Mercedes engineers uncovered by digging deep into the darkest corners of the 2026 technical regulations, and one that the Federation had already banned in a previous version. The result? Antonelli gained a stunning 11 kilometers per hour on the Ferrari out of the final chicane. And on a total gap of just 175 thousandths of a second over Charles Leclerc, a remarkable 169 thousandths came from the exact section where the electrical trick does its work. But the most explosive part of this story is the reaction from McLaren, a team running the exact same Mercedes power unit, who knew absolutely nothing about this strategy. Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, and even team principal Andrea Stella were left completely blindsided by the revelations, and now this has become a full-blown political controversy, one that could land squarely on the Federation's desk. If you don't want to miss any updates on Ferrari and Formula One, hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel to stay in the loop. Let's dive straight into the detailed analysis. To fully understand this stroke of engineering genius, you need to know one specific technical rule. With the new power units introduced in 2026, the electrical component contributes around 500 horsepower. That is a monstrous figure. When the electric motor shuts down, the Federation's regulations require a gradual power reduction ramp, capped at 50 kilowatts per second, and this is there for safety reasons. Just imagine a car suddenly losing 500 horsepower at the end of a straight with another car right on its tail. That would be an enormous danger. So the power has to come down slowly and predictably. But in qualifying, that gradual ramp becomes a real curse. It forces the car to carry a phase of declining power through its final meters on the flying lap. That's exactly why the engineers at Brackley went looking for the door nobody else had found. And now, here comes the real technical masterpiece. The regulations do allow certain situations where the gradual ramp can be legitimately bypassed and electrical power can drop instantly to zero. One of those situations is precisely when the driver fully lifts off the throttle, generating what the regulations literally define as a negative request from the driver. The logic is obvious enough. If the driver lifts off, it means they want to slow down, so the electric motor should cut immediately. And this is where the real brilliance kicks in. Mercedes engineers programmed the control unit with surgical precision, using the car's exact position on the track. Right up until a few meters before the finish line, the electric motor pushes at maximum power without ever entering the reduction ramp. Then the driver lifts off sharply. The power drops instantly to zero in a completely legal way, and the car crosses the line carrying all the speed it has built up. The result? Mercedes uses 100% of the available energy right up to the last useful meter, while everyone else has to start reducing power much earlier. And now, here comes another stunning detail, uncovered by the team at the race. Mercedes built a clever system where Antonelli and Russell receive a specific audio signal in their earpieces, alerting them when the battery reaches a preset level above 0%. Once they hear that signal, the drivers lift sharply off the throttle, a bit like the shift lights on old racing video games. The procedure was tested extensively in the simulator before being brought to the track at Silverstone, and the results were clearly very satisfying. But make no mistake, the risk is enormous. If the timing is even slightly off, and the driver fails to release the throttle before the battery depletes, it would constitute a breach of the sporting regulations, potentially leading to disqualification from the session and a back-of-the-grid start. Now let's look at the extraordinary numbers that explain exactly how this trick decided the pole. Exiting the final chicane, Antonelli and Leclerc were virtually locked together, separated by just 6 thousandths of a second. Then on the main straight, Mercedes unleashed its secret weapon. Antonelli hit a top speed of 253 kilometers per hour, 11 more than the Ferrari. 11 kilometers per hour gained in just a few hundred meters. That is an enormous advantage. The final gap in the standings reads 175 thousandths, and 169 of those came from the exact section where the electric trick operates. In plain terms, without the Mercedes control unit magic, the pole would have been a total coin flip between the two. With it, the outcome was a foregone conclusion. The entire Mercedes advantage at the pole came from one single section of track where the trick makes all the difference. And now we get to the most politically explosive part of this whole story, the part that is shaking the entire paddock. McLaren runs the exact same Mercedes power unit, but at Woking nobody knew anything about the trick. Oscar Piastri, when asked after qualifying, delivered a line that hits like a hammer. He said he didn't even know the Mercedes drivers were doing it, and that probably tells you everything. Think about that for a moment. A driver fighting for the championship discovers from journalists that the company supplying his engine has been using a strategy he has never seen or heard of. Team principal Andrea Stella confirmed the whole picture too, admitting that the discovery had surprised McLaren entirely, that the function had never been discussed with them, and that he wasn't even certain it was available on their version of the power unit. The customer pays for the same engine, but the manufacturer keeps the keys to its most valuable features locked away for itself. Norris, with his usual honesty, added that his lap was perfect, that he had squeezed everything he could out of the car, and that they are simply slow everywhere, through the corners and down the straights. And here's a detail that makes this whole story even more fascinating. This trick cannot be improvised. Antonelli spoke personally about how difficult it was to learn, because driving this way goes completely against every natural racing instinct a driver has. Lifting before the finish line, delaying throttle application in fast corners to save energy, accepting a small loss on the exit to gain much more on the straight. The young Italian had to spend hours and hours in the simulator just to make automatic a movement that a driver's brain would normally refuse to accept. That's why even if every other team discovered the secret today, copying it would still take weeks of preparation, dedicated software embedded in the control unit, and drivers willing to completely reprogram their natural reflexes. Mercedes hasn't just found a loophole. They've built an advantage that rivals simply cannot replicate in a short time. And now comes the question that's firing up the entire paddock and dividing Formula One as it always has. Is what Mercedes has done pure genius? Or is it a form of cleverness that betrays the spirit of the regulations? The liftoff rule exists for safety, to slow the car when the driver asks for it. Mercedes is using it for the exact opposite purpose, to squeeze every last drop of energy right up to the final useful meter. It is completely legal, officially certified, and essentially untouchable. But the regulation was never designed for this kind of use. The history of this sport teaches us that whenever a team finds a gray area, the federation watches, then discusses, and more often than not, eventually steps in. It already happened with the emergency procedure at the start of the year that was subsequently banned. It could happen again, and if the federation decides to close this door too, Mercedes will have already banked a pole position and a very significant points haul. With the Hungarian circuit coming up next, where experts believe this system will be even more effective, the advantage could actually grow further. This game is far from over.